Hey everybody, I'm sure you've heard the news that PS5 Game Backups are available to play on a PlayStation 5 at the time of this recording. I wanted to kind of create a beginner's guide and show you everything that I've learned with playing with this for a little over a month now. So let's just go ahead and jump straight into it. So let's start by taking a look at the game library. You'll see Alan Wake is the first title listed here, and it has an FG in front of it. That is a fake game. Now, if we look at some of the other titles here, Ghostwire, Grand Theft Auto, Guilty Gear, Guardians, and then even Sackboy and Sifu, you'll see that these also have FG in front of it. What these are fake games that I actually do not own the legitimate disc for it. But I can run those games, and I can run all of these games right here, just simply because I have a PlayStation 5 that is running 4.03, which is an exploitable firmware. Now, let's keep going talking about some of the other content, and then we'll get back to the backup part. So the other things you'll see on this PS5 is that I've got PS4 games. Now, this PS4 game happens to be a fake package game, which means that I can run really a large number of PS4 games also on this exploitable 4.03 PS5. So this game would also run perfectly fine. The next game that you'll see is Bloodborne. So this is for the PlayStation 4. It's got the little disc icon, and I do own the game disc to this one. This one, of course, would run perfectly fine because a PS5 can run PS4 games. And then if I go over here to like Madden 22, then you'll also note that I have the game disc for that one as well. So that one would play. Now, there is also other software on here that wasn't really designed to be on a PlayStation 5. And one of those being this homebrew application right here called Itemzflow. So Itemzflow is a homebrew application that allows us to run these PlayStation 5 games. Now, I have other homebrew in here that's also mixed, such as these games from Lappy, which is also another homebrew developer. So these games will run as well. These were definitely not intended to run on a PlayStation 4 or a PlayStation 5, but since these systems have been exploited, we can run those. So now you're aware of the different content types. Let's keep moving forward. So by now, you're probably wondering which games are actually compatible with using Itemzflow. Well, there is this list here, and I must say, make sure that you use this list. It will be in the description below. This is the very latest list that shows all of the different titles that this is working with. So right now, we have right around 28 titles that will play using Itemzflow on a PS5. Now, what's super important about this list is that these are ones that we've all tried and that works. Now, there's also this long list at the bottom of games that don't work. And yes, that is a lot of different titles that we've tried that doesn't work right now. The good news is that we have folks in the community like Cyber that's taking a look at it. So hopefully a bunch of these that don't play will be playable at some point in the future. But if you're looking to get started right now, these are the ones that currently plays. Now, obviously, there's a couple of different routes that you can go in order to get these games. The first most logical route is taking your game disc and dumping it. So Modded Warfare has a video, and I took a look at it. Obviously, it's excellent. I didn't really feel the need to recreate this right now. So I would definitely recommend just going and checking out his video on how to create a PS5 game backup. This will definitely show you how you can turn your disc into something that's playable. Now, for the rest of us that maybe doesn't own the disc, then we have to go and look in other sources. Obviously, I can't put anything like that here on YouTube because it's against their terms. But if you're a member of the PlayStation scene, you probably already know where to get these at. So let's now go ahead and take a look at a couple of different game dumps. Okay, so right here, I've got right around 18 different titles that I've already downloaded and I've extracted. So let's take a look at Alan Wake Remastered, for example. So if we go into the game folder here, we're going to see a couple of different things such as the data, the modules folder, and a few other folders, but then there's going to be these eboot.bin. Now, this eboot.bin right here, as well as looks like this is a backup of it, you can think of this as kind of like the executable that the PlayStation 5 is going to run. Now, if you do run into problems where it says something like what I just popped up on the screen, one thing that you can do is you can download and install HXD, which is a hex editor, and you can select the eboot.bin file and then just drag and drop it onto your HXD. Now, when you do this, if you see that the .elf occurs a little bit later on down in the view here, then that means that this one should not give any sort of error message. Now, if we look at the backup, this one will have the .elf at the very, very top. So just one thing to always check for is to make sure that at least the eboot.bin file does have an elf that is showing up a little bit down the page here, versus one like this right here. This one will not run. They have to be fake selfed. Another kind of got you here is that sometimes in the title itself, such as this one right here, it has Marvel's Guardian of the Galaxy. In order for this one to work, we would need to rename it and then just get rid of that apostrophe right there. And so now Marvel's Guardian of the Galaxy would work. And so in order to play one of these, what you'll need to do is you'll need to download one of them and then go to the folder, double check the eboot like I just mentioned, and then you're going to want to copy that entire folder onto a USB drive. So the only thing that you're going to need in order to get these running on your system is to come over here to PKG Zone and then look for Itemzflow. And it's currently on version 1.03, but there should be another version that comes out probably by the time you watch this. And then just press the download button here. It's going to give you a PKG file, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to copy that over to a USB drive. And now if we go ahead and look at that USB drive, I've got a number of different dumps in here, such as the Alan Wake dump, and then I'll also have that PKG, which is Itemzflow version 1.03. Now, before we go into the PS5, just a quick word of warning. Currently, there has only been support for PS5 versions 4.03, 4.50, and 4.51. Obviously, sleirsgoevy has just added in support for what looks like 3.20 and 3.21. So basically, if you're on a version of the PlayStation 5 software, which is 3.x, basically anything in the threes, or version 4.03, 4.50, or 4.51, then you will be able to run this exploit. So let's switch over to the PS5, and don't forget to plug in your USB drive into your PS5. Okay, so I just restarted my PlayStation 5 because I wanted to walk you through everything step by step. Now, upon restarting your console, you will definitely see something like this, which says for Itemzflow that this PS4 game or demo isn't playable. If you have another version, you can switch versions and you can play it. And that's because the exploit hasn't been ran yet. So let's go ahead and let's discuss how I typically run the exploit. So one of the things that I do is I go over to settings and then I go over to network. So if I go over to view connection status, what you will see if I scroll down just a little bit here is that I have changed my primary DNS to this IP address. So once you change your primary DNS to this number, what will happen is that upon booting up your PlayStation 5 in order to run the exploit, you can simply come back over here to settings. And then as long as you're connected to the internet, you can go to user guide, user guide, user guide, and then you'll get a security warning. So always just say yes on this. I am using EchoStretch's site just simply because I think it's very easy and beginner friendly. But once you do that, one thing to note is that if you press the directional buttons, then it will automatically navigate faster instead of just using your mouse cursor. So I do that and I go to PS5, and then the host that we want to use is Itemzflow. And so right here, you'll see it says current firmware 4.03. So that means this PS5 is exploitable. So I'm going to press on the jailbreak button here, and a lot of magic is happening in the background. Okay, and so when that finishes, the only option that you're going to need to use here is just ETA hen. And there it goes. If you see all of that, then that means it is running successfully. It also enabled an FTP port, which we're going to need in just a little bit. And so now just returning back to the home menu here, you go back over to settings. So in settings, if you scroll down to the bottom here, you're going to see something called debug settings. Now, this is obviously meant for developers, but again, if you're running an exploitable PS5, you now have access to this. And what's really cool is that now having access to debug settings, we can install or sideload packages. And these packages would be everything from such as Itemzflow to any of those homebrew games that I showed to even PS4 games. They would be installed typically using this. So you would go into game, and you'll always get this message. You just press OK, and then you go to Package Installer, and that PKG that we installed earlier, which is Itemzflow version 1.03, is now recognized as something that we can install. So you simply press X on this item right here, and you would just go ahead and install it. Once it is installed, then you have this menu item that's been added to your PlayStation 5. So if you're at this point right here, you are in tremendous shape. So let's go ahead now and let's go inside of Itemzflow and let's take a look at what you get once you run the application. So let's just begin by saying that we want to add a brand new game to this system. How would I do that? Well, upon first entry, you will see this screen, and we're going to select the one that says PS5 app. Now, this is the workflow that I use to copy any game over. So the next thing that I do is I would go over to change app path, and then I can switch over to the right panel, which is the USB panel, by pressing R1. And so now that I do that, I'm going to navigate to the very end here, and you can see Werewolf the Apocalypse is selected. So I'm going to go ahead and press the square button now to change to that directory. And now these games typically run a lot better off of the hard drive. So what I do is I go to copy app folder, and then I put all of my games in a /data/game folder. So from right here, as you can see, there's a bunch of the other games that I have installed. I would just go ahead and press the square button to let this be the folder that I'm going to copy to. So obviously you can see right here that this game is right around 17 gigabytes. I'm copying it from Mount USB 0 over to data game and the folder name. Now it will automatically put in the title of the folder, which was whatever you called it on your USB drive. Okay, so and at this point, it has been copied over successfully. So I'm just going to press OK on that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to change the app path to the data folder and then game. And then I'm going to go to Werewolf and I'm going to press select folder, which was a square. And so now at this point, I can go ahead and just launch this game directly from the menu itself. Now, once you launch the game, these sometimes take a little bit of time to load up. And as you can see, there is that debug message. You'll get that just about every single time you try one of these PS5 games. But what you can tell from right here is that I simply copied this game over to my internal PS5 storage, and I'm now able to play it. So let's go ahead and let's go back to the main menu here. And there is where that game is running. Now, again, note that right here it does say FG. Now, as you're starting to work with Itemzflow, you may be looking at how do I do things such as remove this icon. So if you press on the options button, nothing will actually happen here at all. Now, if I did something such as take a game disc and I put this into my PlayStation 5, what you would be able to see is that now it's kind of recognizing the disc. But if we go back over to that fake game, which was Werewolf, and we press the option button now, it shows eject disk. So obviously there's something kind of going on right there behind the scenes that makes it think that this is an actual disk itself. If we go to that, so how would we remove one of these icons? Well, if we go back into Itemzflow again, we can see that by default, it went ahead and it created one of these like virtual apps. So if I press X on this game right here, then there is a couple of options. Again, I can go ahead and launch the game, or you can do things like move, copy, or delete the app folder. And then finally, there is remove the virtual app. So if I no longer wanted this as an icon, in order to get rid of it, I just need to go to remove virtual app. Now, if I go back to my main menu here, that icon is completely gone, and I can make sure it's gone by coming over here into the game library, and it is no longer showing there. Now, if I want to add that back, I simply go back into Itemzflow, go to that PS5 game, change the app path back over to our data, game, werewolf, and press square, and then just simply do a launch again. That will recreate that icon that's on your main menu there. And there again, the game is loading as intended. Now, the next thing that you may be wondering is that, okay, now I know how to add a game and to remove a game. What happens when you have multiple games installed? And when you do, they all just still function just like a normal PlayStation 5 would. So let's go to a couple of games that are fake games. So we'll go to Alan Wake Remastered. And one other thing I am noting here is that I'm not editing this portion of the video. This is all live as far as the loading speeds go. So we have another game here we can try, which is Sackboy. We've got Guilty Gear. We could go ahead and try Grand Theft Auto 3 just as an example. And you can really tell that it's pretty easy to switch between all of these different types of games. So how does this show up under storage? So let's go back to the main menu here, and we'll go over to settings, and we're going to go to storage. And right here under storage, you can see what this kind of looks like. So the games and apps that I do have installed, meaning these original discs that I showed you a little bit earlier, these are all showing underneath here. Now, obviously, any of these fake package games aren't going to be able to be managed through something like this right here. But if we look at the other space here, which is showing 393.8 gigabytes, that is all of those fake package games. So you may be wondering, how do I get rid of or delete those games? Now, one method you can use to get rid of these games is to just simply go right back into Itemzflow. Now we'll go back to that existing title, Werewolf. We'll press X on this one. We'll go to IO options, and you can see this first option here says move, and then we can copy. And then finally, there's one that's called delete. So this says it deletes the whole app folder, but it does not remove the virtual app. So we're going to take that option and we're going to go yes here. Okay, so right there, it says deleting game. So now, as it stated, the icon is still showing up right here. So even though we deleted the game files, and if we do something, we come back over here to our settings and we go to storage, you can see right now with other, it's at 372 because that other game was about 17 gigabytes. So again, if we wanted to remove that icon right here, we go right back into Itemzflow. And now we're going to take that option to remove the virtual app. So now that we removed it, obviously it won't be showing up here anymore. Now, there's obviously another way that you can delete them, and that's simply by using the FTP that was built into ETA Hen. And so from there, what you need to do is you need to get your network's IP address. So we're going to go to network here, and I'm going to go down to view connection status again. And I can see that my IP address on my local IP, it is 10.0.0.142. So let's switch over to Windows again, and let's look at how we could remove a game if we wanted to do it another way. So I'm using FileZilla, and I have an entry here called PS5 403, and I've got my IP address, and then the port is 1337. And you're going to want to make sure that you use plain FTP and then press the connect button. Once you do that, you now have access to the file system on your PlayStation 5. So if we go to the data folder and we go to game, right there is all of the games that I already have on my PS5 internal storage. Now I could select one of these games and just simply do a delete function here and delete the game that way, but I typically like using the user interface of Itemzflow, especially when I want to do any sort of file manipulation. But you can also do that through FTP. So the last part of this video is for those that is using a PS5 3.x and trying to play some of these game backups. One thing that you can do to ensure that most of these games will run simply opening up the param.json file, which this is typically found in this SCESYS folder. So if you do that and you scroll down to the very bottom, you'll see that there is the required system software version and the SDK version. This one is setting at 4.00, which means that this game, which is Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga, would not run unless it is backported by Cyber or one of those people. Now, we could take a look at another game, which is Balan Wonderworld, and what we can see here is that this one has a SDK software version of 1.00, which means this one would play perfectly on, say, for example, a 3.20 system. And then this one also would run, this is Alan Wake Remastered. This one would also run on a 3.00 system. So you can do a little bit of investigation work before you actually copy these over to your hard drive because it takes a long time unless you have an M.2. Anyway, I hope this kind of beginner's guide to PS5 backup helps somebody out there. I tried to include all of the notes that I've ran into or things I have hit, and hopefully this is beneficial to you. So feel free to like the video and subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more. I'll see you on the next one. Michael, out.